I almost killed my tomato plants last month, and honestly, I thought I was doing everything right. But then, I tried something that my grandmother used to do, mixed it with what my neighbor swears by, and added one more ingredient that farmers have trusted for centuries. What happened in just 2 weeks completely changed how I think about feeding plants. And by the end of this video, you're going to see why mixing these 3 things created results I never expected. So here's what happened. I had these tomato plants that were just sitting there, not growing, leaves turning yellow, and I was getting frustrated. I'd been using store-bought fertilizer, following the instructions perfectly, measuring everything out, applying it on schedule. I was doing everything the package told me to do, but something wasn't working. The plants looked sad, they were barely growing, some of the lower leaves were dying off, and I started thinking, maybe I just don't have a green thumb. Maybe some people can garden, and some people can't. Then my grandmother visited and she saw my sad little garden. She walked right up to those tomato plants, looked at them for about 10 seconds and laughed. Not in a mean way, but in that knowing way that grandparents do when they've seen something 1,000 times before. She said, "You're overthinking this. We've been feeding plants the same way for hundreds of years, and it works. You don't need all these fancy products with numbers and chemicals you can't pronounce." That comment stuck with me. I mean, she grew the most incredible garden when I was a kid. Massive tomatoes, cucumbers, as long as my arm, peppers in every color, and I don't remember her ever going to the garden store to buy fertilizer. So what was she doing differently? That got me curious. Really curious. So I started digging into what people actually used. Before, we had all these synthetic fertilizers lining store shelves. I went down this rabbit hole of old farming books, talked to older neighbors, watched videos of traditional farming methods from different cultures, and I found 3 things that kept coming up over and over again, no matter where in the world I looked: fruit peels, rice water, and chicken manure. Now, I know what you're thinking. That sounds too simple, right? Like, how could something as basic as banana peels and rice water compete with scientifically formulated fertilizers? I thought the same thing. But here's the thing. There's actual science behind why these work so well together. Each one brings something different to the table. Each one feeds your plants or your soil in a unique way, and when you combine them, something special happens. So I decided to test it myself. I took my dying tomato plants, and I started feeding them this combination. And when I tell you I couldn't believe what I was seeing, I mean it. Within 2 weeks, these plants that I thought were beyond saving started to transform. The yellow leaves turned green again. New growth started shooting out from everywhere. The stems got thicker and stronger. It was like watching a time-lapse video, except it was happening in real time in my own backyard. But before I get into the results, let me explain what each of these 3 ingredients actually does. Because once you understand the science, you'll see why this works so well. Let me break down these 3 ingredients for you because each one does something different for your plants, and understanding what they do is going to change how you think about plant nutrition completely. First up, fruit peels. My grandmother would save banana peels, orange peels, apple cores, basically any fruit scraps from the kitchen. She'd throw them in a big bucket with water and let them sit for a few days, sometimes a week. I always thought it was just her being thrifty, using everything and wasting nothing. Growing up during harder times, she never threw anything away that could be useful, but it turns out those peels are loaded with potassium, and potassium is what helps plants develop strong stems and better fruit. It's like giving your plants the energy they need to actually produce something instead of just existing. When plants don't get enough potassium, they might grow leaves, but they won't flower well. They won't set fruit. Or if they do, the fruit is small and doesn't taste great. But when you give them potassium from those fruit peels, everything changes. The stems get stronger so they can support more weight. The flowers develop properly. The fruit grows bigger and sweeter. It's one of those nutrients that you don't think about until you see the difference it makes. Then there's rice water. In Asian cultures, people have been using rice water on plants for generations. My neighbor, who's from Vietnam, never throws away the water after rinsing rice. She keeps a container by her sink and pours it straight onto her garden, and her plants are always thriving. Like, her vegetables are the talk of the neighborhood. I started researching why, and rice water contains starches and trace minerals that feed the beneficial bacteria in soil. Think of it like probiotics for your plants. You know how eating yogurt or fermented foods helps your gut health. Rice water does something similar for soil. It creates this whole ecosystem of beneficial microorganisms that break down nutrients and make them available to plant roots. These bacteria also help protect plants from diseases and help them handle stress better. Without these good bacteria, your soil is basically dead. It's just dirt holding plants up. But with them, your soil becomes alive, and that makes all the difference. Now here's where it gets interesting. The third ingredient is chicken manure, and I'm not talking about just tossing fresh chicken poop on your plants. That'll burn them for sure because fresh manure is way too strong. But aged chicken manure that's been sitting and breaking down for months, has been the secret weapon of farmers for centuries. Go to any old farm, talk to anyone who's been growing food for decades, and they'll tell you chicken manure is gold. It's rich in nitrogen, which is basically plant food for growth. Nitrogen is what makes leaves green and helps plants grow bigger and stronger. It's what pushes plants to put out new shoots, new branches, more leaves. Without enough nitrogen, plants just stay small and weak. The leaves turn pale or yellow. Growth slows down or stops completely. But with the right amount of nitrogen, they explode with growth. You can almost see them getting bigger day by day. The beauty of chicken manure is that it releases nitrogen slowly as it breaks down. It's not like synthetic fertilizer that hits your plants all at once and then disappears. It keeps feeding your plants over time, building up your soil at the same time. So I thought, what if I combine all three? Potassium from fruit peels for strong stems and good fruit, beneficial bacteria from rice water for healthy soil, and nitrogen from chicken manure for vigorous growth. It seemed like the perfect combination, each ingredient covering something the others didn't. Together, they'd give plants everything they need. I split my garden into two sections. On one side, I kept using my regular fertilizer, the same stuff I'd been using all season. On the other side, I used my homemade mix of these three ingredients. I wanted to see a real side-by-side comparison. No guessing, no wondering if it was just the weather or luck. Just a straight-up test of which one worked better. I made a batch using banana peels and orange peels soaked in water for 3 days. The water turned this dark brownish color and, honestly, smelled pretty funky. But I kept going. I saved my rice water every time I cooked rice, which was a few times a week. I'd rinse the rice like normal and pour that cloudy white water into a separate container instead of down the drain. And I got some aged chicken manure from a local farm. The farmer told me it had been sitting for about 6 months, so it was perfectly broken down and safe to use. I mixed them all together in the right proportions. About equal parts of each, diluted with more water so it wouldn't be too strong. Then I started feeding my plants every week. I'd pour it around the base of each plant, making sure to soak the soil really well. On the other side of the garden, I stuck to the regular fertilizer schedule, following the package directions exactly. The first week, nothing dramatic happened. Both sides looked pretty much the same. I was starting to think maybe this was just an old wives' tale. Maybe those synthetic fertilizers really were better and more efficient. Maybe I was wasting my time with kitchen scraps and manure. I almost gave up. But then week 2 hit, and I started seeing differences. Small ones at first. The plants getting my homemade mix started pushing out new growth. Little shoots appearing at the base, new leaves unfurling at the top. The leaves were darker green, more vibrant, thicker somehow. They looked healthier, more alive. The regular fertilizer side looked okay, but nothing special. Just average plants doing average things. By week 3, the difference was obvious. I mean, really obvious. Anyone walking through my garden could tell which side was which. The plants on the homemade fertilizer side were noticeably bigger, bushier, and had more flowers starting to form. The stems were thicker too. When I compared them side by side, the homemade mixed plants were probably 30% bigger. Maybe more. They had this vigorous, healthy look that the other side just didn't have. The regular fertilizer side looked fine, don't get me wrong. The plants were growing, they were green, but they looked kind of flat, kind of lifeless in comparison, like they were just going through the motions of being plants without really thriving. But here's where things got really interesting. Around week 4, I noticed my homemade fertilizer plants had way more fruit setting, more tomatoes forming, bigger tomatoes, and they seemed to ripen faster too. The cherry tomatoes on that side were producing like crazy. I was picking handfuls every other day. The beefsteak tomatoes were massive, some of them bigger than my fist. On the regular fertilizer side, I was getting tomatoes, but fewer of them, and they were smaller. The plants also seemed more resistant to pests. I had some aphids show up, which happens every summer. Usually they attack everything, and I have to spray or pick them off constantly. But this time, they completely ignored the plants on my homemade fertilizer side. They went straight for the regular fertilizer plants and left the others alone. I couldn't figure out why at first. Then I read that healthy plants with strong cell walls are naturally more pest resistant. Bugs go for the weak plants because they're easier to eat. Now I was hooked. This actually worked. Like, really worked, better than I ever expected, but I also realized something pretty quickly. Making this mix every week was time-consuming. Really time-consuming, saving fruit peels and waiting for them to break down, collecting rice water every time I cooked, sourcing chicken manure and making sure it was aged properly, mixing everything in the right proportions, dealing with the smell, which got worse as the weather got hotter. It was a lot of work. And the smell, let's be honest, wasn't great. My neighbors started asking questions when they'd walk by during mixing day. One neighbor joked that it smelled like something died in my yard. Another asked if I was composting inside my garage. It was embarrassing. I started wondering, is there a way to get these same benefits without all the hassle? That's when I discovered Fancy Chicken. And I know the name sounds funny, but stay with me here. It's basically the evolution of what I was trying to do with my homemade mix. Someone took that ancient wisdom about chicken manure being amazing for plants and created a modern version that's clean, balanced, and actually easy to use. What caught my attention was that Fancy Chicken is based on organic chicken manure, just like what farmers have used forever. The same ingredient that gave my plants that incredible nitrogen boost. But instead of dealing with raw manure, aging it for months, and hoping you got the ratios right, they've processed it into a clean, odorless formula. No more holding my breath while mixing fertilizer. No more explaining weird smells to neighbors. It has that same nitrogen boost that makes plants grow strong and green, but it's balanced with other nutrients so you're not going to burn your plants or create problems. The more I read about it, the more it made sense. They took something that's been proven to work for centuries and made it practical for regular people who don't have time to make fertilizer from scratch every week. People who want great results, but also have jobs and families and other things to do besides babysitting a bucket of fermenting fruit peels. I decided to try it on my remaining plants, the ones that were still on regular fertilizer and looking mediocre compared to my homemade mix side. I figured if Fancy Chicken could match what I'd been doing manually, it would be worth it. Within 2 weeks of switching to Fancy Chicken, I saw the same results I got with my homemade mix. Dark green leaves started appearing. Vigorous growth shot out from everywhere. More flowers and fruit began developing. The plants perked up like someone flipped a switch. But, without spending hours every week making batches of fertilizer. No smell, no mess, no complicated mixing ratios to figure out. I just measured it out, mixed it with water according to the directions, and fed my plants. That's it. 5 minutes instead of an entire afternoon. And the results were just as good, maybe even better because the formula was consistent every time. With my homemade mix, I was always guessing a little bit about proportions. The thing about Fancy Chicken is it works with your soil, not against it. Just like my homemade mix was feeding the beneficial bacteria and building healthy soil over time, Fancy Chicken does the same thing. It's organic, so it breaks down naturally and improves your soil structure with each application. Those beneficial microorganisms love it. They break it down and make the nutrients available to plant roots gradually. You're not just feeding your plants today for a quick green up. You're making your soil better for future growing seasons. You're building that living ecosystem in your soil that keeps plants healthy long-term. My tomato plants ended up producing twice as much fruit as they did the previous year, and I'm not exaggerating. I actually counted. The peppers were bigger and had thicker walls. The herbs were bushier with more intense flavors. Even my flowers looked better. Everything just looked healthier overall. The kind of healthy where people stop and ask what you're doing differently. And I wasn't stressed about mixing ingredients or wondering if I got the proportions right. I wasn't worried about burning my plants with too much nitrogen or not giving them enough potassium. The formula was already balanced. I just had to apply it and let it do its thing. Here's what I learned from all of this. Those old methods our grandparents used weren't just folk wisdom or lucky guesses. There's real science behind why fruit peels, rice water, and chicken manure work so well together. Natural nitrogen sources really do fuel stronger root development and healthier plants overall. The potassium builds strong stems and better fruit. The beneficial bacteria create living soil. The nitrogen pushes growth. All of it together creates plants that don't just survive, they thrive. But we live in a different world now. Most of us don't have time to ferment fruit peels for a week, or save rice water in containers all over the kitchen. We want those benefits without spending all day in the garden mixing fertilizers and dealing with smells. We want results without the hassle. That's why something like fancy chicken makes sense for modern gardeners. It takes that ancient fertilizer wisdom, the stuff that's been proven to work for generations, and makes it practical for how we actually garden today. Clean enough to store in your garage without complaints. Convenient enough to use on a busy weekday, and proven to work just as well as the traditional methods. My plants are thriving now, better than they ever have. My soil is healthier and more alive. I can actually see earthworms when I dig around, which means the soil ecosystem is doing great, and I'm spending more time enjoying my garden, harvesting vegetables, and actually relaxing outside, instead of making fertilizer every weekend. If you're struggling with plants that won't grow, or you're tired of synthetic fertilizers that don't seem to work long-term, maybe it's time to go back to what's always worked, just in a more modern way. Try building your soil health with organic nutrients. Feed the beneficial bacteria that make everything else possible. Give your plants that natural nitrogen boost that's been fueling gardens for centuries. Whether you want to make it yourself like I did at first, which honestly taught me a lot, or you use something convenient like fancy chicken to save time and get consistent results, your plants will thank you. The proof is in how they grow. Trust me, the results might just shock you too. I never thought I'd see this much difference from switching fertilizers, but here we are. My garden has never looked better.